Welcome to the Westminster News Podcast, your alternative to the mainstream media.
And welcome to another edition of the Westminster News Podcast. Michael Heaver here with a very special guest. It's Andrea Jenkyns, the Member of Parliament for Morley and Outward. Andrea, how are you?
Hi, Michael. I'm very good, thanks.
Lovely to have you on the show. Now, very interesting. You were, in your constituency of Morley and Outward, you were elected in 2015, where you took the seat off of Ed Balls. Then you got more than 50% of the vote in 2017. And then in 2019, more than 56% of the vote. So first of all, I'd like to ask you, what's the sort of feeling in that constituency over the last few years?
It's very much a Brexit seat. We 60% voted to leave, and it's great, very down to earth, plain spoken like myself, and I think it's a good match actually, and I do love our area. Now the seat wise and the election, if I can just sort of say how campaigning's changed actually in the last few years. In 2015, when I was standing against Ed, it was actually really grown-up politics, and Ed and I was very respectful with each other. You know, we'd have a banter whenever we bumped into each other. And but I found a real change in 2017. It started, the left started getting a lot nastier, even attacking me for being an unmarried mum at the time, even though I was engaged to be married. And this time it was nastiness on steroids, actually. The campaign itself, I mean, I had every piece of my banners, get put in fields and people's houses, every piece was damaged. My face punched through, the C word on there, lots of swear words on there. And also a member of one of my volunteers on the campaign team got chased with a sledgehammer. And it was not the easiest campaign, but just as with Brexit, Michael, as you know, we won in the end.
I mean, why do you think that nastiness has come in? I mean, I'm seeing it across the board. There seems to be a real hardcore element of the far left that have been given a free pass by a lot of the media for a while, who are a real nasty bunch out on the streets. I mean, why do you think things have deteriorated in that aspect?
I think several reasons. Number one was when Corbyn became party leader. Like I said, in the 2017 election, that's when it started hotting up, and it was completely different to the 2015 election. And obviously, the Labour Party allowed them to get away with this kind of behaviour. And I think the media had their part to play as well. I mean, I'll give examples. The abuse that I got as an MP, as a Brexiteer MP, where I remember, somebody inscribed outside my office wall, Andrea, kill yourself, please. Now, this was on the same day that somebody was shouting outside Jess Phillips' office. But the national BBC retweeted one of my tweets about Brexit, where I was having a go at somebody, which was after my post with this, and it didn't get any coverage. Yet, there's a bit of difference between people telling you to kill yourself and someone shouting outside an office. So that's just one example, really, where there's been such biasness of the media. And really, it's allowed it to go on too long. And, I mean, I take people on social media like you do, Michael. And I think we need to call out this behaviour because it's unacceptable. I mean, it got quite bad, really, last year. And I had a couple of months off Twitter and got my team to update it. And I also got a guy who phoned my office and threatening to rip the bitch's face off. So that ended up in court. So and again, as a society, we've given people a platform through social media, in this day and age, but a lot of people hide behind these fake profiles, and it's time to remove the mask now. We've got to start holding people to account.
Do you think there's a double standard in terms of when there's serious abuse directed at a Conservative MP, it seems to get less mainstream media coverage than if it's aimed at a left-wing Labour MP?
I've experienced that myself, Michael. I'll give you another case. I got quite a horrific email, sexually explicit, telling me that my female genitals to be cut with barbed wire and die in a pool of my own excrement. And it's very explicit. And that was covered by the Mail, the Sun, the Telegraph, and none of the guardians of this world or the left wing papers. So I've certainly experienced that in my time.
Unbelievable. Just finally on your constituency, I mean, do you think that, I mean, certainly on this show, we talk a lot about the gap between mainstream public opinion out around the country and the sort of very London-centric media. And obviously, as I said, you got more than 56% of the vote in your constituency. Obviously, you're a very well-known pro-Brexit MP. Do you think there's a major detachment? Do you sense that in terms of the feeling and opinions in constituencies like yours versus a lot of the sort of TV coverage that we see every day?
Yes, most definitely. I have to say, I think local media are slightly better than the national media at sort of picking up on what it can be like on the ground. But I've seen it time and time again. I mean, I think what my constituents and myself, what we want to see, promises kept. And Brexit was one of them. I think that's a big reason we got this 80-seat majority, because we've got to deliver on our promises, and we saw time and time again, in the last few years, as you know, Michael, as you've been part of this, really, you've been fighting for Brexit and democracy too, of people trying to stop us every step of the way. And my constituents, and I think most of the general public, just do not agree with that. And also, we like to see people being strong on crime as well. It's why should people be let off? And so when people have committed a crime, so I think it comes down to the basics: be strong on crime, keep your promises, and do your best with the economy. Provide good education for our children, feel safe in our own home, and so I think it's those things that really matter to us people on the ground. Right?
Before we get to where we are now on Brexit, I just want to ask you. I mean, the public, well, I think were flabbergasted and disgusted by how a lot of Brexit blocking MPs behave. They did absolutely everything, didn't they, to try and stop, delay, overturn. What was it like to be in Parliament at that time and watching these sort of shenanigans going on?
I was quite unpopular among that kind of group. I remember even today I can go in the tea room and certain of our colleagues ignore me. I mean, I've got I don't particularly care, but you can see, because I was so outspoken against our former Prime Minister, and I guess people saw me not being loyal, but I saw as standing up for democracy, standing up for our manifesto, and standing up for the public. So it was horrible, actually. And I remember speaking to one of the doormen in Parliament, and after the election, this recent election, and he actually said to me, and it hit home then, it's great to see people smiling again. He said, I'd forgotten what that was like. It was such an intense few years, but I think it was for the whole country, and it was certainly on the ground. People were so frustrated at not being listened to and being ignored. And I'm proud of Boris, actually. Look at, he had an awful time, didn't he, when he first became Prime Minister, and he tried everything to outmaneuver the Remain Parliament, and it was a rotten Parliament without a doubt. And we got there in the end, thank God.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, chunky Conservative majority now. How different is it being in Parliament now with the situation having changed after the election?
Oh, it's wonderful. And do you know, a lot of the new intake are Brexiteers as well. And it's great to have a rapport with them as well. And there's a real positivity. No, it's really fantastic. And it's like it was in 2015, to be honest, but probably even better.
After the latest round of negotiations, David Frost, and of course the UK government have been absolutely clear that they're not going to extend the transition. David Frost saying that the UK will be a fully independent country at the end of the transition period. that it's unclear why a Canada-style trade deal is so hard for the EU, and also we must face the possibility that a deal won't be reached. And I've also seen that you tweeted, WTO, here we come. I mean, what's your assessment of where we are, whether you think there'll be a deal or whether you think there'll be no deal?
I think, first of all, good on Mr. Frost and the government actually playing hardball and putting, our country's interests first. We should be.
It's quite the contrast, isn't it, from the
really
previous regime?
Yeah, most definitely. So I think it's great to finally see that. We should have been like that 3 or 4 years ago. And so, what would I like? I'm a fan of going WTO, especially during this time, not be shackled at all to the EU, and, just take Britain and strive forward with trade agreements across the globe. That's what I personally like. But if we can get a good deal, then great. And I do trust our negotiating team this time. And but I just think if we look at the last week, really, thank God we're not in the EU still, that we've left, because look how billions of pounds of British taxpayers' money would have been contributed to the latest rescue fund. Imagine that, Michael.
Yeah, for sure.
So without any guarantee of how it would be spent. So it wouldn't surprise me if we do get a deal, just because you've been an MEP, Mike, aren't you? It's always last minute that they come up with something. But I do think we're in good hands with our negotiating team, that they're playing hardball and they'll do what's right for our country. And I know that, the government, we saw even September last year how there was all these adverts, and now there's advising businesses to prepare for leaving with no deal and going on WTO. So this time we are prepared for it as well, which we're in a much better position than we was in the last couple of years.
Now, no doubt in the run up to the end of the year, we'll get another wave of Project Fear from some staunch anti-Brexit hardline Remainers, the few that are
Has
still...
that ever given up, actually, Michael?
Well, that's an ongoing process on their part. And they will, of course, say, oh, no, we can't possibly have no deal. We can't have WTO. We've got to sign up to whatever the EU want to offer. What would your response to them be?
My response would be that, we've had a referendum, we've had 2 elections, we've got an 8-seat majority. Shut up, let us get on with it.
Direct and to the point, absolutely. Okay, so on the BBC, now this is an issue that we get at Westminster, we get a lot of feedback on now. People increasingly irate at some of the BBC bias coverage and the licence fee. You obviously wrote a piece for Westminster saying it's time for a chat about the future of the BBC, and obviously we talked a bit earlier about the media and some of the skewed coverage. I mean, what's your view on the BBC and the licence fee and where we are?
I think the TV licence is outdated. I think it belongs in the 2020s, the 1920s, not the 2020s. And, it's a different playing field now regarding media. Look, we've seen the rise of streaming, means that consumers have more choice than ever before. And there's so much different models now, how to pay for content than in the past. There could be models where we can have adverts, such as the ITV, etc., subscriptions or part subscriptions, pay-per-view. And I just think that, we've got to actually have a serious talk about this and change things. I mean, why should elderly or anyone be forced to pay over £100 per year for a service that they might not really use? And especially when they're under the threat of jail. I mean, apparently 1 in 10 magistrates' cases are now to do with this. And to me, that's such a waste of resources, of time. And I think we should be concentrating on catching real criminals.
Absolutely. And finally, I just want to ask, as we mentioned, it's a very different parliament now, Conservative majority. Over the next few years, what sort of things do you really want to see change and done as the country moves forward with Boris Johnson's government?
I think ultimately the thing for me is, getting the economy back on its feet, which is the same for everybody. We've got the COVID recession now, and it's really going to start biting even more from October when our furlough system is lifted. but you know, we have got to pay these things back as well. So I want to see, you know, the rise of new businesses, as investing in a lot of techie industries, and in the future, and training for young people as well. I think that's going to be important, because they can become the lost and forgotten generation, where employers might be looking for people with experience rather than somebody fresh out of university. So I think we need to, you know, remember and that they will need support this time. So I'd like to see us, you know, doing some great trade agreements across the globe, and our economy back on its feet and thriving again over the next few years. And also, you know, beating COVID. You know, that's obviously another priority as well, that people stay safe. It was unexpected. I mean, you remember, Michael, you were celebrating on the 31st of January, and gosh, none of us across the globe expected it, did we? And so, unless you was in China where it was happening, of course. But it's, yeah, we've got a hell of a lot to do. And I think that the important thing is policing, being strong on crime, especially after the recent instances we've had of graffiti and damage of public property. You know, we need to be strong on crime. We need to catch criminals and prosecute criminals. We need to have a strong economy, invest in education, and that's the things that I care about.
Well, Andrew, look, it's been great to have you on the show. I hope we can have you on again soon. You know, you're one of those MPs that has been absolutely consistent and been an absolute Brexit warrior in ensuring that the will of the people wasn't ignored. So thank you very much, and we look forward to speaking to you again soon.
And you're welcome to come to Morley again, Michael.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot.
Take care. Thank you very much.